Yeah, welcome to Let's Talk with Dr. Hans. And we have Justin Williams with us today. And it is such an exciting time. Please, Justin, just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So I'm from New York, originally from Queens. I hail from New Jersey as well. I spent my college years at Princeton and my graduate school years at Rutgers University. Also spent time finishing up my degree at Rider University too. I studied religion, the classics, classic political theory, modern political theory, and then got my master's in political science overall, focusing on sustainability, but also economics. I'm an avid writer as well. I'm an author of Reborn Virtues Constellation, which is out on Amazon and Barnes and Nobles. I have my own podcast, which Hans has been on, The Trend with Justin A. Williams, which is a part of a over 30-year-old institution and brand called The Trend that my mother started. So it's a family business.
Wow.
And that's pretty much me. I do grant writing and I'm an avid rugby fan. I
Oh,
played
nice.
rugby in
Nice.
college,
Okay.
my senior, freshman, and a little bit of my junior year. I would say I was a prop. I was not a wing. But I love the game and also love just talking about global issues.
Excellent. So when you talk about rugby, isn't there quite a big difference between your rugby and the American football?
Oh yeah. Oh, very big difference.
Yeah.
For one, the fans, when you take a football fan to see rugby, they are shocked. They you see people who are 290, 6'5", never stop running, and they can't believe that that is possible.
Well, okay.
In American football, it's very static. It's like, it's the defensive tackle is never going to get the ball. The
Mm-mm.
cornerback, if he gets the ball, it's rare and it's fast and it's over very quickly. Um, so it's very different than American football. I love American football as well, but there's just when you watch rugby, it's the game of gentlemen behaving savagely, and I
Yeah,
think I
that
think
that that
it's
explains it very well. Yeah.
yeah, and I think that's such as life, right? I mean,
Mm,
you have
mm,
to have
mm.
times where you are venting that inner kind of animalistic enterprise that you might have. Some people
Correct.
choose poetry, some people
Mhm,
choose soccer.
mhm.
I like rugby.
Excellent. Well, today we talking Pan-Africanism and the struggle against the Western influence. I know we talked a little bit about this on our last discussion on your slot. And yeah, I think
Yes,
we
yes.
had quite a good discussion, and you can't completely unpack this topic. There's so much to talk about. Um, Obviously, for those of you who are hearing the word Pan-Africanism for the first time, it is unity and solidarity, which emphasizes amongst a chosen sector of people. So, if when we say Pan-Africanism, it emphasizes unity and solidarity among people of African descent worldwide. So, not necessarily where they live, but an agreement of solidarity and unity worldwide. And then also, it's a cultural identity which promotes our African cultural identity, values, and traditions. And then it also promotes self-determination. Pan-Africanism advocates for African self-determination and independence. What are you saying, Justin? What for you? What is it? What does it mean for you? What does Pan-Africanism mean to you?
Sure. I mean, we can root it in the theories of Haile Selassie. We can root it in even in what was going on in the last days of Gaddafi, with him trying to unify in terms of economic establishment. I think for me, Pan-Africanism is economic empowerment through the further connectivity of economic systems within the African continent that should be strident across cultures, right? Whether you're in Morocco, whether you're in Ghana, whether you're in Kenya, there needs to be a united front against not only the presence of kind of toxic Western influence, right? I mean, you could have good ties to Western democracies. I think to be successful in the world, you're still going to need to be somewhat involved with the Frances and the Englands and the Americas.
Mm.
But remember, we're also kind of fighting against the past. We're fighting against the past of a colonialism where King Leopold of Belgium was able to murder 20 million Africans, right?
Oh,
And
wow.
we don't talk about that. We
Right.
don't talk about also the brain drain of African talent and wealth and people
Mm,
power
mm, mm.
due to slavery
Right.
into the other parts of the world. In my mind, as also a descendant of the Dahomey peoples, I do not see Pan-Africanism as an affront to your specific culture,
Mm,
right? If
mm, mm,
you are someone who says, well, Pan-Africanism means it just kind of strips me of, it sounds like globalism. It strips me of my local regional identity. So I'm not really necessarily someone who talks much about the cultural aspect of this, although I'd love to and be more educated about it and how that could work. For me, it's about a railroad that is going to unite the continent in a way where we can ship goods better. It's about banking systems that are going to make it easier for transfer of wire transfers.
mm,
It's a
mm,
technological revolution, right? It's doing this in a way where it doesn't have to be angry. It
mm,
does not have to be bludgeoned. It just has to be effective. And I think that's the best way to think about it. And from what I know of the African peoples in my life,
mm,
um, people that come over here that are from Africa are very efficient in what they do, and they have clear goals of what they want. I see no other greater power than to have that develop as a unified force
mm,
for
mm, mm.
economic good.
Wow. Okay. So as we are unpacking, obviously we've defined what um, obviously Justin representing the view of the Western side, and I'm on the African side. Now we look at the struggle itself, the
Mm.
struggle against Western influence. Okay, uh, in 3 points, I could say cultural imperialism, Western cultural influence can lead to cultural erasure and homogenization. What do you think about that?
Yeah, homogenization from the lens or imposed upon anybody is going to be a problem. And if you look at the book by Chidi Achebe, Things Fall Apart, the story of Okonkwo is a story that is every colonized country's story. That there is a space for pride, there's a space for ingenuity, and your culture being something that is dear to you being
Mm,
erased for
mm,
the sense of some kind of overarching narrative of some overarching power that now is establishing itself in your region. You know, when the French came into Africa as well as the Portuguese, they were amazed by not only the cleanliness of the cities, but the hospitality of the peoples.
mm, mm.
Many of them compared it to ancient Greece, right? How the Greeks were known for you better be hospitable to a stranger coming by and
Yes.
better have a civic society.
Mm, mm,
So we as Westerners are not educated on that
mm,
aspect of Africa.
mm,
My goal, and this is a goal of mine as a writer and as a future screenwriter and producer in my lot, is to tell the story of pre-colonial Africa.
mm,
And I
mm,
think from looking back at that from the Western perspective, we can get a sense of self-esteem that we do not have currently and we are searching for.
mm,
So
mm,
when we talk about the unification of cultures imposed on us, we there's particular ways that that manifests in every single place of the
mm,
diaspora.
mm, mm.
It is going to be a different politic in Brazil, just like it's a different politic in Argentina. Did you know that in Argentina, and just like in many places in South America, they had this plan to erase the blackness that was there by
Mm, mm.
actually doing intermarriage,
Yeah.
which seems almost hypocritical, right?
Yes, yes.
Because in America, interracial marriage was illegal
Oh,
up until
wow.
1967.
Okay.
Um, so you know they what they did was they in Argentina used to be very high percentage African, and then they erased through kind of intermarriage and whatnot
Mm,
to
mm,
now where most Argentinians do have African descent, ancestry.
mm.
But they don't present that way. Obviously, if you go to Argentina, most people look more Caucasian. So we have to really unpack it in a specific sense, which
That
it,
point, the
yeah,
point of the eradication of the black color, black people,
yeah,
uh, where do you think it stems from? You see, there's so
right,
much in history that people have also not realized. There's a lot of
right,
inventions that are credited to black people. There's a lot
yes,
of obviously they say the white color is superior,
mm,
is made to be superior, okay?
mm,
But
mm,
in turn, the black color has is known, if for those that have studied well, has been known to have a more have a lot of good things that have happened that have been hidden. Like, let me tell you one thing that I just discovered recently is that the Eve gene in the black woman is able to make any race. You can have
so it's the progenitor of all racial kind of genetic
exactly, exactly.
phenotypic, right,
So, in other words, it's not like black just came from anywhere, and it's
right,
not exactly black anyway. I don't know why the word black came into it, but
mm,
um, even the whole issue in the religion where they say Jesus was white
mm-hmm,
and this really handsome guy with long
mm-hmm,
hair, whatever it is. But when they look at the descents of Judah, most of them came from Egypt.
yeah,
And this the area where they know that Jesus came from was an area where Africans came from.
yes,
So now look, the eyebrows go up. So
right,
in other words, there's a lot that is being shoved back, which is also, I feel, very unnecessary for the way forward. If politics or the struggle of influence had to do with just uh, development,
mm-hmm,
I think we would go a bit further. But now it's mixed with racism,
mm-hmm,
which is also slowing down the country where I'm at now in South Africa. The fact that even our own black people, our own black South Africans, don't
mm,
like other black foreigners.
wow,
So
wow,
because of the fact that they feel if one black person who is mentally advanced and able to find success in your country is stealing something from you
hmm,
instead of bringing benefit or bringing you something to learn from. You see,
right.
you see where the whole aspect can be
Yeah, yeah, I
misconstrued.
do.
Yeah.
I do. There was a great there's a great book by Ralph Ellison called Invisible Man.
Mm,
And around the time when he wrote it, there was a kind of a theory going on in the New Negro movement called the crabs in a barrel theory, which is
mm,
that colonialism taught blacks that blackness is bad,
mm,
right?
mm,
So your color, your skin is a mask that you were wearing. James Baldwin used to talk about he could walk into a room and feel his own skin. That's how
mm.
embarrassed and
Yes,
awkward he felt.
yes, yeah.
And this imposition is not going to let you like other black people too.
Mm.
That's the key
That's the thing.
aspect.
Yes,
See,
yes.
it's not just that you don't like yourself, you don't
Mm.
like others like you.
Correct, correct.
And then what happens is you keep things especially regional and
Mm,
especially in a state of denial,
mm,
right? You come to another country and you say, I'm not working with Ghanaians because I'm Nigerian. I'm Brazilian. I'm not working with people from Georgia
mm, mm,
or, Georgia, United States or from South Carolina, right? And me, if you look at me, like I'm mixed raced, but my African heritage speaks through to me in a sense of pride only because of the education I got from my parents,
mm.
not because of the education I got in the school system, which
Correct.
was much like the British school system,
Mm,
right? So what I think is interesting about blackness and where it comes from is initially when you had blacks interacting with, I guess you could say, Caucasoid people in the Mediterranean, um, the Greeks and looked at black people with esteem. They said that these are people that the gods dine with.
mm.
Zeus and Hera and
Yes,
Apollo,
yes,
Dionysus are
correct.
dining with the Africans.
Mm,
These are
mm,
people in what they called Ethiopia, but Ethiopia was the name of Africa. which
Correct.
included Egypt. I
Correct.
gotta put that out there. A lot of Americans, for some
Mm,
reason, think Egypt was not a place of darkly melanated people or people that looked like us. It was. Um, and they said that these are people without blame. They are blameless, which
mm,
meant that these are almost a flawless people.
mm, mm.
So Pythagoras, Socrates, I believe Herodotus, um, all of them admitted through Thucydides, all admitted that they studied in Egypt. They studied in what they called Kemet. They
Yes.
studied in Nubia,
Mm.
right? So there was no infractory
Yeah.
level of distaste from the blackness. This
But
is really a medieval conception. It's a
yes, yes,
medieval conception,
of
and
course, of
it's
course.
one that happens in relation to the amount of blackness, I think, this is just my theory, in
Sure.
Spain for 700 years.
Wow.
Black people and Arabs, the Moors and Berbers and Arabs conquered Spain in about 700 AD, that century, and they stay there up until the Reconquista in the 1490s, 1480s. So that's 700 or 800 years of black people existing in the European continent as a dominant force. Do you not think they sent envoys to Spain and other places in Europe? There's
Hmm.
evidence now that they talk about how redheads are descended from black people,
Mm.
that there were black people in Ireland and Scotland, and that there were Vikings that were called
Oh,
Eric
wow.
the Black and all this
Yeah.
stuff.
Mm.
So I think there is a particular sense that if you are a historian today and you are looking for a new venture in terms of a new dynamic to study, go study the history of Africans in Europe.
Yes.
Uh,
Correct. The
and you
Moors.
will find
Those were the
that
ones called the Moors, yeah?
the Moors, right,
Yes,
that you will
Moors.
find
Mm.
that there is a lot that's going to help us, but
Yes.
there's a lot that's going to re-educate us on why
Yes.
blackness became a bad
Change
thing.
how all whole perspective. Yes.
Whole perspective
Completely.
on history. Yeah.
Yeah. Because now the fight is decolonization, which is fighting for independence and self-determination, challenging Western colonization because
Right.
colonization has now changed.
Right.
Colonization is not anymore the issue of uh, obviously people coming in and taking over. They've given us the independence, but then
Mm.
now they've made us dependent. You
Yeah.
see, it's that we are
Yeah.
bullied into an economic structure of borrowing and maintaining a certain status quo and also a system that has been
Right.
introduced to us. So, I mean, I don't know how do you think that we can get out of that? Is it possible? Will it ever
It's
be possible?
it's very difficult, and it takes some undemocratic means
Mm,
sometimes. I mean, if you
mm,
look at what's happening in Central Africa with Burkina Faso and Mali and other countries talking about uniting financially
mm,
and thoroughly separating from their Western overlord. Um, they're not necessarily Torre is not necessarily a democratist.
mm,
He's
mm,
someone who's trying to do the best for his people. Now, he may eventually evolve into someone who supports democracy overall, but I think democracy can have different shapes to it. And I think that there are examples like in Singapore,
mm.
when Singapore was as a rising tiger in the economic sense,
Okay.
that a one-party state can, if it's, you look at El Salvador, right? The
Mm,
dictator there, Bukele. If you have someone who is particularly righteous in their means, and it does mean to do good, they can do a great amount of good and detaching the Western power. Because if they say, look, you're not here all the time. We have the armaments to protect our gold mines and our diamond mines. We're gonna do that, and we're gonna privatize it for a certain amount of time, and we're gonna build African companies that are gonna control these things. And there's nothing you can really do about it because we have political will. And I think that's where it starts. It starts with the will, not necessarily of just the people, to finally have to say, I've had enough. And it's the will of the leaders to apply the pressure to the appropriate target and then advertise that targeting in the correct way, right? You have to speak that truth to power. So many African leaders that did try to do this were unfortunately murdered or
mm, mm,
disposed of or betrayed. And even Touré is talking about how he was almost assassinated a couple times by some of the most unseemly people.
mm, mm, mm.
And so This is someone who has understood that there is a lot of political will in the country,
Yes.
and he has focused that against the French, and rightfully so. And if you look at what's happening with it's a very strange alignment
Mm,
with conservatism and conservative anti-globalism in Europe. People
mm.
like in Hungary, people who speak out in Italy, the
Yes.
Italian prime minister spoke out against the French and what they do in Africa and said we need to empower Africans in Africa, not
Yes.
necessarily trying to force them into our caverns and
Mm.
force them into our lifestyle and into our power and access. Remarkable. This is someone you would consider to be a white person saying this that aligns, and she's a conservative,
Yes. Yes.
aligning
Correct.
with a revolutionary in
Mm.
Central Africa. The
Wow.
politics of today are fascinating, and they are only getting more fascinating.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I think the solutions are going to be many, but I do think that at the end of the day, it's the political will to do it in a focused fashion.
That's correct. Well, the only challenge I have is the whole globalism, well,
Mm,
globalization,
yeah.
because we have globalization and colonialism, neo-colonialism. Okay, so obviously I must define that for the listeners. When we look at globalization, it perpetuates Western cultural and economic dominance. Okay,
Mm,
and then neo-colonialism is the Western powers exerting influence through economic and political means, and that's what we were talking about just now. So now when you talk about solutions, I know that there is, for those who are learned or those who are proactively wanting to see change, can see that there is solutions. There's ways that all
mm,
these things can benefit, allowing, let's just say, the West allowing the African or the third world countries to build an interdependency or an independent way of thinking by using their natural uh, resources to let's just say to point their natural resources back into their own country, because
mhm,
the lie that is there is that when we sell our natural resources, then we become rich, then we become stable. But
right.
then we sell our mines and our land to the outside world, and they process our natural resources and spread them out into the market. Then we get a small percentage of that for us to keep paying back our debt.
Right.
Now
Right.
look, you'll see that. You see,
Yeah.
already we've lost completely. Now, if
Right.
we at the beginning, which is a bit too late now, obviously there should be certain things that we can do, but slowly get to. But it's too late now to say, okay, let me have it back.
Hmm.
Because I mean, look at this. South Africa by itself. I mean, I don't want to be quoted, but as far as I know from tabloids and media, they say is a close corporation or a Pty Limited company that was registered in the United States. Now, how is that possible?
Yeah.
You understand? So,
Right.
already there, that's what I'm saying. How is it that Africa is going to take that back? Where, in
Yeah.
which place?
That's
Yeah.
that's more difficult because if you're not going to start to shut down Western influence and privatize and do it in a complete fashion, which I
Mm-mm,
mean no connection, no involvement. If you're going to play the game small,
mm-mm.
then you're going to look at what Thomas Friedman said in The World is Flat, right? The game of
Yeah.
globalism was made by those who seek to take advantage of a
Correct.
race to the
Correct.
bottom,
Correct. Mm.
right? They want to keep you in a position where you don't tax very much. You put Western companies ahead of your own companies and your own development, and you latch yourself to something that is prestigious
Mm.
because it's white and because it's European, not effective because it's African and because this is going to boost your own people, right? Because we have situations now that happen in Africa where foreign companies come in and they are not hiring local
No.
people.
Correct.
And you never hear of, all you hear of, and I think it starts with a little bit of education too, um, the decolonization of the mind. You never hear of African universities in European or Western settings. To be quite honest, we don't know we could not name any. But we can certainly name Oxford and Cambridge. And this is where these bankers come from. They come from the milieu
Mm,
of these country club, Oxford type, Princeton, Rutgers even, right? These small networks. And they wrote the game to be a small network. So I think policy has its answer, but it's really going to take more of your
mm,
first real kind of, if you don't want to call it a civil rights movement, you need to march and protest for economic rights. You need to march and protest to your government to be transparent and to change your constitutions if necessary. That might be the key, right?
okay.
But none of this happens. None of it happens without the right type of leadership. I'm sorry to say. One of the, I think is the flaws in the attempt of African Americans to gain equal power in the United States is that we rely too much on
Mm,
the
mm,
opaque, loud kind of processes,
mm, mm,
marching, going on TV, attaching yourself to every single racial incident that happens, and a belief that racism is the number one thing holding you back,
mm.
a colonial belief. Uh, we need to attach ourselves to the quiet measures, right? I'll tell you a story my dad used to tell me about the Jewish population here.
Mm.
They used to not allow Jewish people on Miami Beach, in
Oh,
Miami,
wow.
if you've ever been to Florida. They used
Yes,
to not allow them.
I lived in Orlando, Florida.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you know the business, most of the businesses now in Miami Beach are probably owned by Jewish companies and Jewish people.
Oh,
And I mean
wow.
that in no derogatory sense. I mean that in a totally glorified sense. Like that is fantastic.
Talking about, you just brought up a very, very good topic. Talking about Jewish, who is a Jewish and who is not a Jewish? I mean, how do we authenticate a Jew?
Well, I think so speaking in terms of like for myself,
Yeah.
I am of Jewish descent, but I am not Jewish myself,
Oh,
right?
okay.
So my dad's mother was Jewish. Um, my on my mom's side, I have Sephardic and German Jewish ancestry.
Okay. Okay.
Um, I think for the most part, from what I know as from the religion,
Hmm.
is that if your mother is Jewish, you
Yes.
were Jewish, right?
Okay.
You were
Okay.
part of the tribe.
From the mother's side.
Yeah, the mother side, yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay.
But I do know that there are people out there, uh, in our country. Kanye West talks about this all the time,
Mm.
about the Black Israelites, right, and
Okay.
the forgottenness of Black Jewishness.
Ah.
And when I was growing up, when I would tell people that I'm of Jewish descent, they just thought it's because I had to be because I was mixed. But there are Jewish populations that existed in North Africa since before the time of even Christ, you could say, in Ethiopia and Nubia and Libya and Libya and other places, maybe even as far as Carthage. Wherever the Phoenicians went,
Hmm.
you would have Jewish or Israelite Hebrews going around. Hebrews at the time, and if you can read this in the Bible, were a
Yes.
very effective people at
Mm.
building and constructing not only cities,
Mm-hmm.
but they were fantastic at organizing economic power into a small kind of project.
Hmm.
This could be defense, this could be all sorts of things.
Hmm.
So a lot of other cultures would go to the Israelites
Yes.
for aid in terms of how to do what they wanted to do. This
Correct.
is, I mean, it's no, if you've ever read Torah or the Old Testament, you know that Israel or the Judea, the two kingdoms, were attacked not just because for willy-nilly, but because of their resources.
Yes.
And some of those resources were people, how they think. Why do you think Cyrus the Great went and took the intelligentsia and the scribes
Mm-hmm.
and the wealthy people of the both two Jewish kingdoms into ancient Persia? And this interacts with Zoroastrianism. He wanted their expertise. That's
Mm-hmm.
what empires do. You collect talent.
Correct. Yeah.
So In terms of if you want to talk
Whatever
about
whatever benefits the growth
whatever
of the
benefits your
value.
growth.
Yes,
And
yes,
Cyrus was a
right.
brilliant thinker in that way. One of
Yes.
the first to think of society as a place
Mm.
of a growth model,
Yeah.
right? If you're not growing, you're dying.
Yeah.
And I think I do think, and I applaud the Jewish community in America because of all the kids I grew up with
Yes.
that were Jewish
Yes.
all had um, a growth mindset. They did not think that anything would impede them, even if there were obstacles. Obviously, there are many obstacles. Anti-Semitism
Yeah.
is on the rise in the United States, on both the liberal side and sometimes the conservative side.
Correct.
But they did not believe that anything would impede them. They did not ever doubt that their family was constructed in a way that would support them, even if they didn't have economic means,
Mm, mm,
right? And they never doubted, in any sense, that they had the particular talents to be good enough in whatever field they went into. Self-esteem, political will, it's building that within people. And what I always taught my students when I was teaching was that financial empowerment comes when you feel empowered yourself to then go and see that the obstacle is the way, right? Challenge those things. Some white person comes to you and tells you, some white liberal comes and tells you, oh, man, it's so tough out here for you and racism. Nonsense. I will make it.
mm,
I
mm.
will figure out a way. There has to be someone who wants my talents.
Correct. Correct.
Just like Booker T. Washington we used to say, there's going to be a time where if you're good enough, it will matter.
Correct.
Attrition,
Correct.
right? So
Yeah.
I
So,
appreciate that model
mm.
of resistance.
Um, Justin, I don't think this our discussion is going to be exhausted in today's episode. So I'm thinking that we set up so that we can have a part two of this, so that we
Absolutely.
fully discuss this topic. Um, this has been Justin Williams and Dr. Hans on Let's Talk. Please join us as we continue to unpack and see, is it influence? Is it disadvantage? Is it a problem? Can we look at opportunities to seeing that instead of us looking at how bad it has been and what needs to be undone, are there opportunities for us to look at a new synergy between the West and the Pan-African community in order for us to see a brighter future ahead of us? What can you give the audience as a take home?
Sure, I'll give you as a take home is that there's always going to be power in knowledge and education. And there are great books. There's a great book that I like called From Babylon to Timbuktu. There's
Mhm.
another great book called Black Athena.
Mm,
Understand what you have been in the Western imagination,
mhm,
right? Those books, and then understand the truth about it. So if you can obviously as a person of color, you understand how Westerners think about you, but
mhm.
let's also unpack how originally Africans were seen in, as
Correct,
well, and the
correct.
contribution we've made.
Yes. Yeah. So out there to our African community, our Pan-African community, let's take life intentionally in the sense that our cultural heritage is very key. It's not about who came from where or whose colors, who's blacker than who, but it's about what did our forefathers do, or how did our forefathers create a heritage and a culture that was solid, that was unwavering,
Mm,
to the point that now we don't even know what our culture is because we
mm,
are busy in between trying to figure out, is the West, what can I take from the West, a little bit from the West, a little bit from my culture. Let's try to be authentic, and maybe with that authenticity, we may be seen different and not just an object of manipulation. But hey, who's talking?
right.
But let's see you next week or the next episode as we unpack the challenges of Pan-Africanism and obviously the influence of the West. Thank you, Justin.
Thank you so much, Professor Hans.